And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys, are with you today, and thanks for joining us here on KCMX, as well as on our YouTube channel, as well at realestateShowOregon.com. Well, Joe's over there, of course, and has been with us many years. In the middle here is a fella, Greg Goebelt, who's a real estate broker with Sandy Royce at Royce Real Estate down in Ashland. And it's great to have you here. Welcome to our show. It's the first time you've been here, and I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you've been a broker a long time.
17 years now, yeah.
Yeah. And so you started, actually, it would have been right around the original recession. No, before the Great Recession, wasn't that?
2002.
Yeah, well, you had a good run up there, didn't you?
We came in on the end of it. You got to ride that whole incredible experience of those 8 years there where we went from boom to bust, I'd say.
Yeah. It was a great experience in the sense of, seeing both sides of it prior. I feel like it's given me a little education prior.
Absolutely.
Because there were a lot of things leading up to that.
Yeah.
And then lastly, but obviously during that time period from basically 2007 down was rough for sure.
It was.
But
you
survived
it. In a way we go. And that's tell me about what before we talk about other things. The market here we're in mid-March right now. Tell me what you're seeing out there that our buyers and sellers may be expecting in the coming months.
So generally, with my clients, what I've been telling everybody is that if we could look back now, to this time period, in about 8 months in the future, we probably are looking at it. It'd be easy to see that we are in both the seller and buyer market, and it is switching over.
At the same time, isn't it?
I think yes, it's. There are advantages of being a buyer, and there's still some remaining, benefit to being a seller. To me, it's all tied into inventory and interest rates, and as soon as those go up, if they go up a large amount, then possibly there'll be a percentage of buyers that will have to just pull out because they won't be able to buy where they want to buy necessarily.
Well, interest rates were supposed to climb. They've actually fallen now, into the fours, which is terrific again. So that part of it's there. I think we're going to have a really strong market ahead. It's because the demand is there. That's what we're seeing. The demand. People are moving. They're doing all sorts of different things right now, and people coming here, right? Is that what you see?
I do. I see the demand. I guess what I mean is that I'm telling my sellers it is a great time to sell right now.
Yeah.
And instead of necessarily waiting for another year or two, and of course buyers really want to buy right now because the rates are so low. But there are so many things that can affect that. So if the stock market moves, then that controls this. And so I think it's still, to be on the conservative side, it's important to let people know that I don't think that you can ask for everything as a buyer. And as well, I think the days of the seller calling the shots are a little bit on the fence. And so I think it's a good advantage for both right now. So I expect this year to be a pretty healthy, driven market. You know that
the latest NAR stat showed that 82% of sellers, 78% of sellers are giving some sort of concession to the buyers.
Yeah, I agree.
78% of that. So just that's 3 out of every 4 are giving some sort of incentive. That could be a home warranty. It could be closing costs. It could be other things as well. But just think of that. It's 78, almost 3 out of 4.
Think how long we saw through the last probably 14, 18 months prior to this last couple of months, where the sellers were getting anywhere from 98 to 99.9% of their selling price very consistently. The market was really bearing those top-notch prices.
And that's dropped. It's dropped quite a bit. In fact, let's see. Those latest stats show right now they're getting 95% of that. So it has dropped a little bit, which is showing that you've got more negotiating power for the buyer
and
this type of thing.
And the sellers are having to kind of adjust down to the price that has backed off a little bit from a really strong peak for them. So
and I think that's also showing a little bit that the appreciation on the houses is dropping, and as everybody takes 5% less, that adds to showing that there's actually a slide on the appreciation amount. So when it started in that first year in 2012, we were getting 14% appreciation. The next year was 12, and it kind of went 10, 8, 7, 5. And it's down to a point now, and that's why I think it's really good for both markets right now because you can buy at a great interest rate, and at the same time you can still get, obviously,
Sell,
95%, you can
almost
still
on
get
your
it
market.
sold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what happened in the last 3 months? You know, those December, January, February months. Jackson County, total number of sales. It surprised me, was down from 612 a year ago to 487 in that 3-month period. The price, 4.9% was the average change from a year ago. But the interesting part of the stats to me was the inventory. We've talked about we're getting more inventory. We're seeing more inventory coming. Remember, there was less than 1,000 houses for months and years. Then we went over 1,000, and remember, we came back. Right now, a 30% increase from a year ago in new listings. Think about that. That's amazing. Almost 1,000 again.
Yeah, that's excellent.
My understanding is we have roughly around 6 months.
Yeah, well, we're getting there. We're getting it back up.
A standard normal market.
When's the last time we said that?
Yeah, 2004.
It's been a while. Yeah. Really, it has.
Because we had like 5 years in 2007. You know, we had so much inventory.
Yeah. What are some of the other stats that we've got here? In February, okay, we're going to compare February of 2019 against 2018. Joe, Greg, we got pending sales were down 17%. All right. Always interesting there. Average days in the market, now we're at 55. So we have gone way up in the average days in the market here. All right. Available homes per buyer, it's up 24%, which reflects the increase in inventory that we see. The month supply of inventory is up 40% now to 3.3, which is halfway there to that normal market that we've had. Pending sales and then new listings were actually down 10% in the month of February. But remember, we had a lot of snow, we had some terrible weather, and it reflected in those weekly statistics that we share with you on our newsletter that they were actually down. So that absolutely reflects exactly what happened in February, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely.
So it wasn't a bad month. There was still a lot of sales, and there was still a lot of activity.
And we're in a little bit of we'd had 2 really strong winters of months of activity that were almost abnormal, or were certainly more robust than we had seen. So they were due to tail off a little bit then there. I think some people were just pointing towards the spring and pointing towards the more active market that's lays ahead and really is on our doorstep now.
I think it's in force so much that you start looking in early spring. So I think a lot of people are not looking in February, which is a shame because there's often inventory there.
We tell our sellers there's some advantages to being on the market in the winter.
But I've done a lot of open houses in January and February because I had listings there, and I was amazed how many people came. You know, we're looking and actively looking. And it really runs the gamut of older couples, younger couples with families. I mean, it really, there's a great variety out there. So
I would say that I'm getting on open houses. I'm getting definitely people coming by and a strong flow.
Some are looking. Many are just starting their searches. We're just kind of looking and seeing what's out there. So all this is building up to springtime. And of course, as we've told all of our viewers for the last 10 years. March, April, and May are the 3 busiest months of the year as we go through them, and so it's really kind of a give and take market, and but a lot of activity, and you want to make sure that you check with your broker because you want to have someone to help you do that, right? Otherwise, you don't want to do this yourself. That's for
right.
Sure, right?
And I do think I feel like we're possibly going to have an uptake on rural properties that are wanting to be on the market and hopefully sold by end of June.
You think so?
Potentially avoid, if we have a smoky season, it's a concern of rural properties. And I think that going in a little bit early so that you maybe have it sold prior to that is in their best interest. So I know that I've talked to a lot of sellers who are thinking in that way.
Well, rural properties have really been on a decline for the last 2 years now.
Yeah.
In fact, in this last reporting period, December through January, sales were down again in the rural areas, but the interesting part of it is that they've actually lost value. They've gone down in value.
Yeah.
There's a glut. There's still the cannabis.
They were overpaid for.
The cannabis hangover is still out there.
Yep, they were overpaid for a couple of years.
I'm just amazed at how far though that's fallen.
Yeah.
Remember, 2 years ago they were going out the door. People were going to make millions of dollars, and now we're seeing 2 years later a 1% increase in value. Or if you own 10 or more acres, the value dropped 10% in that period, that 3-month period from a year ago. So we still have that The cannabis
market
hangover.
adjustment, that is.
Market adjustment. What areas do you see, Greg, that are strong in the market that people may want to see that are out there? It changes by community. Ashland is different than East Medford versus Jacksonville and Eagle Point. So we got to always remind you that as we give you statistics, it varies by neighborhood and price range and all that.
Well, I would say that new construction that is designed for the people that want to buy 2-bedroom houses is high. I think we're trying to find housing that is affordable, and therefore how do you build affordable housing and how do you find affordable housing? And one of the ways in building is to build it smaller. And smaller is desirable right now, but at the same time people don't want to give up certain things. So I think that's a strong market in the sense of finding 2-bedroom homes, which for a long time we haven't seen that. Like when we do sell 2-bedroom homes, they're usually built in 85, 87, 92, and you don't see them as much. But now it is actually a strong market.
They're coming back in vogue.
They are very much so, and empty nester kind of situation of less yard, and that's one of the ways that you beat the high construction costs that we're experiencing, both from a labor problem and also from a cost of supplies. And so the only way you can really do that is by building smaller and putting them on smaller lots and then bringing them to affordability.
And that's what we're seeing certainly all over. I mean, you see those in those planning commission meetings that you go to, right?
Yeah, they're trying to find, and also to maximize the buildable land that we have, even with our urban growth boundary expansions. We're going to fill that up pretty quickly and have a need for more before we know it, before those 20 years are up, that we get a chance to go back and add some more.
Well, we got a break coming up here in about a minute or so, and that's why we wanted Greg to come in today to talk about kind of how we're developing in the future. Greg represents developers in a lot of different projects around that I know you've been involved with, and there's some fascinating ones. We're going to talk more with him about
Greg's
that.
been to some planning commission meetings, I bet.
Yes,
it's my job to be at the ones I go to, but you have
to go to
take on that. Right. It's your job to be at those too. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, look how land prices have changed in the last few years. Remember, you couldn't give it away a few years ago.
Dirt cheap.
As you talked about it, you look back then, what you could have done then, what you got now. And that's a great example is land.
Yeah.
But I've seen people who come into open houses that I've had, and they've toured some of those places that you talked about, the small places, on small, tiny lots, or large houses on small lots. And boy, it's just kind of stuns people. They don't like that. I mean, it really is different kind of living.
Well, I think it's also different generations and also different mindset on what they're looking for. If people are looking for that white picket fence yard and everything like that, then understandable. Then buying existing, you'll get more square feet.
Yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for, and that's what builders need to build for. That's what we're going to talk about more with Greg Goebelt here in just a minute. We've got a break coming up here. Don't forget, you can check out any of our past shows always at realestateshoworegon.com. They're all there. Some great shows. We hope you'll check them out and watch them. We're coming right back to KCMX. And welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the real estate guys, with you. And thanks for joining us as always here. We're almost approaching 500 shows. You know that? We're like at 480, something like that right now.
Yeah, our birthdays, our show number, they're all on the up. We're moving up.
We were really young and good looking when we started this thing a long time ago.
It's a good thing we're not trying to break into the business now. You're right.
We're not doing that. But we're with Greg Goebelt here, who's a real estate broker with Royce Real Estate down in the Ashland area. And we've known Greg since we became brokers and followed his career around and what he does. And you say that you represent developers. So tell me what that means, actually.
Well, for the last 14 years, I've represented Suncrest Homes.
Suncrest, right?
And who's a fine developer and a great contractor building a great product. And both in Medford, all over the valley, really, but definitely specializing in Ashland talent and in custom home building.
And developers are having, we always hear from, I guess, I was thinking subcontractors and things like that, but that is, some guys have different views of that and how that works and how that adds costs or not adds costs, but that doesn't seem to be an issue with a lot of developers, does it?
Well, I think every developer and every major contractor, that is, if they're a contractor developer, are always battling the difference between the acquisition cost of the land and the rising costs of building. And, I could tell you that I knew, a couple years ahead that we were going to run out of land because I just saw how many lots were being bought at what speed. And if that continued in 8 months, we were going to have no more lots, for example, in Talent. So when you realize that, you try to get as many lots as you can, but at some point you have to develop. But if you're in a situation where it's unsure because there's so much risk, you have to be very careful about because you could buy it, develop it, and then prices could adjust and you could be upside down. Mm-hmm. But the main thing is building what people want is really important. And since affordability is the main thing and the costs are so expensive in building, then you have to build smaller. Or I would imagine the other thing is you could do lesser quality. And I think with, people that I represent on Suncrest Homes in particular also, that it was more important to keep those things that people want, like quartz countertops and hardwood floors, and get them a very nice quality Earth Advantage certified home, but to make it smaller. So that's where the affordability comes, not from putting in just vinyl and carpet and downgrading the quality, because people want quality as well. And
sure, if
we
you're going to
found
build a new home, you want that,
yeah,
right? I mean, you want to have a new
right, but
absolutely.
But ultimately, everybody has a budget of how much they can spend. And when we were listening, what we really heard was, and what was proven from who came to us, is a lot of single women,
yeah,
over 57 years old, definitely a big market, and they wanted. Single story, aging in place, 3-foot wide doors, thresholds at the front door that are movable.
Isn't that good to hear him say that, Joe?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, we've been hearing this for years here.
The need is there, yeah.
Completely.
But very few are building there to that.
Well, I think that if you have your ear to the business, I think that there are people that are building there, and that's why with Suncrest, why Charlie Hamilton did move in that direction is because. We kept, normally you tell people no, get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath because resell, it'll be better.
Right.
But boy, the demand was so strong that we keep building these 2 bedrooms, 1,050 square feet, but it's kind of like 2 suites, and they sell very quickly. And that's one of the ways, and obviously the smaller lot, to get them to a price range for Talent, to get them to around. $300, $299.9 to $335.
Yeah, that's kind of the sweet spot. It sounds like when we go to different meetings and I hear different people talk about that. That's that sweet spot in there. So the demand is there. You think for the smaller places, we're seeing and hearing lots of changes coming in the people's ability to add units, smaller dwelling units, tiny homes, whatever you want to call them, onto their properties, new buildings, kinds of things like that. Do you see that coming too, or do you think the demand? I think the demand is there, but someone's got to start doing it, I guess.
I think that cities all over, and specifically, I know that Ashland, Talent, Medford, but Ashland and Talent I know better, are definitely already trying to move in with those higher density decisions for people to do that. Now
we're even talking tiny lots now. We're talking tiny lots, 400, 500 square foot homes attached to some of these things.
Cottages. This
is the cottage ordinance.
Is the word that you hear a lot is cottages.
Cottage.
And it's not without pushback though from the neighbors of these proposed developments, and they're trying to find their way into infill and to make the most of the land and the availability that's there. That's always going to be part of the equation.
I would say that ultimately there are a lot of laws already existing in with cities that already allow for an ADU, an additional dwelling unit, and they have to notify the neighborhood, but the neighborhood doesn't necessarily have a choice on that, as long as the neighbor that wants to add that to their house is not has plenty of parking and things like that.
I was thinking of the Ashland development when they were doing multi.
You're talking about by the high school, down by the football field. You mean the new one?
That one, or maybe it's on Ashland or down from Omar's.
Well, the question is always about parking when you develop these things, and that's always a big issue.
Yeah, so where they're going to go, and then people are just resistive of having single-family residences, in what they feel is encroached on. But
I think that
they better get used to it because it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah,
it's one of the choices that you either expand out into the UGB, the urban growth boundary, or you try to come up with higher density. And obviously, people are not going to be that happy about it. But I often find if you own a piece of land in a house that now suddenly fits the new dimensions of being able to split that lot, those people who own that are pretty happy about it. So it's one of those things where I think it's just on what side you find yourself in as an owner, and then do you decide to develop it yourself or not? And
do they ever talk about building up? We keep going out with acquiring more land for for more homes in residences. But do we ever go up around here? We don't seem to go up
above commercial.
We don't go up. Well, we don't go up. We very often.
No, I mean the ADUs above garages.
Yeah.
Living close to town in a development where it's commercial downstairs and residential upstairs.
Cool.
But you're really not seeing anything higher, that go up to a 3-story, and that's also because that causes its own issue of being an eyesore.
Oh, that's right.
It's fighting different, trying to find a good balance between expanding and doing infill. It's about affordability and also building the types of homes that people want, because I think that's a crucial thing, the type of home.
One of the coolest neighborhoods around, you may have heard of it, is Verde Village in Ashland. That started years ago. I know it got caught in the recession, but it's back, and it's again. Tell us why that is such a unique neighborhood, and maybe as an example of what others may develop around the communities.
So that land sat there for a while, and then phase 1 went in, and those were those townhouses that were kind of connected, right? Okay. And people were, their bills for utilities were like, $30 a month. It was just amazing. Yeah. And so phase 2 ended up being Oregon's first zero energy ready single family neighborhood. So what that means by zero energy ready is that those homes are Earth Advantage Platinum. They have a very low amount of draw as far as energy use. And so the houses are audited, and then solar is added to those homes to make them just net zero as far as energy use. And what we do is we get it completely ready, so it's just ready to plug in, and then the consumer can buy the solar and get the tax credit. Okay, because they don't give it to contractors.
In those places, they're not large, are they? I mean, they're not big places, or they're various, or what? Tell me about that.
The smallest one that I know of in Verde Village is 1,200 square feet, and then I would say the rest are somewhere between 15 or 1,550, and some are building up as much as 1,750 or 1,850.
Okay, that's a good size.
3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. Really a beautiful, modern look to them. They look great.
The question is, you talked about demand. Have they sold them? They've also. That's what I heard. They're all sold.
There's actually, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. I think total in the subdivision. I think there's about 7 available. But you should check, because there's both Suncrest Homes and KDA who are both working in that same area. But I still have more of those listed. But yes, they've sold and done very well. And I think that they look amazing. They take a lot of credit from the passive solar that they have, and going away from Craftsman and using more textures on the outside. So it's a great project, and we're very proud of it also, just because of the energy use on it, and the bioswales around it, the low-cost landscaping that's around it, which is designed to help feed, bring in insects that feed those birds on Bear Creek.
Yeah. Do other governments, Joe, ever look at that kind of stuff that's happened there? And does anybody else ever come forward about this, something like that type of a Verde Village?
That's really the kind of the cutting edge and kind of a bleeding edge locally that I know of. Twin Creeks is a really nice mixed use development, but not in the same sense. More so in the range of ages and families and all this out there.
I know that cities often want, for example, the front door to face the street. And one of the things when you have passive solar is you need the house to be able to face in a way that takes advantage of that. Right. And so actually, you'd think that would be really easy to pass in Ashland, and it really was difficult to get that done, because that's how you build these homes that use less energy and are also healthier from a no off-gassing and things like that.
Are there still incentives, financial incentives, or any incentives in building of these homes, or Earth Advantage homes, or retrofitting any existing homes, or where does that stand, Greg?
Well, I would say the incentive for buying an Earth Advantage certified or platinum home is for the purchaser that they're getting a healthier home. They are getting a home that uses less energy and has a less of a carbon footprint. It increases the value generally around $10,000. So there are benefits in itself of doing that. And I think the idea is the more homes that we just click off that are built that way, when we look at 30 years into the future, as you know, on MLS, there's a checkbox for it. And some people, they'll say, well, find me a home, 2010 and newer that's Earth Advantage, and only those homes would come up as far as being built at that time. So that's a big incentive. There's still solar incentives, though they are getting less. But the cost of solar, a lot of people always say $20,000, is really $13,000 to $15,000. It's gone down. So these things are kind of meeting to hopefully create like a perfect storm of being able to build a better home.
Overall, does the construction cost, is it equal to a regular home, or are we still a little bit higher when you're doing a net zero home like that?
There's definitely cost to the developer and contractor for it, yes.
Yeah.
But usually, like I said, it's usually, depending on the size of the house, it could be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 more for building that way. And it is a superior way of building in the sense of it uses less wood, it's engineered to be stronger, it has no off-gassing products, it has a better filtration system for the air, just everything about it, because that's with Earth Advantage, you have to be certified in 5 different areas. It's not just one thing. It's not like put in LED lighting and you're fine.
Right.
These homes have to be, they put a blower.
They meet that standard. The blower.
They put a blower test on it and everything. And so one of the things, like, we tend to make houses with lots of holes in them. And in Europe, they tend to build homes that are very, very tight. Yeah. The issue was the air quality.
The air quality,
and
air
so
flow,
they've come up with the ways that now automatically turn on these
what's it called?
fans.
Air transfers or whatever they call
air
those
transfer
kind of things.
systems.
Anyway,
that's right.
So those are there, and they're there, and some people who love them, I'm sure, who buy them, really enjoy the great benefits. $30 bill for utilities is pretty darn good compared to what people say half the time.
That's a few days in my
house.
Yeah.
We're with Greg Goebelt here today on the Real Estate Show. We've got a break coming up here. We've got our final segment. Don't forget you can check out any of our past shows at realestateshoworegon.com. They're all there for you. Please check them out. We're coming right back after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete and Joe, the real estate guys, with you next week. Well, the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors lobbyists will be here, and we'll kind of give you an update on legislative activities, especially the rent control that has been passed, and a few other things that may come around that they're talking about up in Salem. So that'll be next week up here on the show. Today we're with Greg Goebelt, a real estate broker with Royce Real Estate down in Ashland, and a good friend of ours for a long time. Been a broker for 17 years, weathered the storms here and all those kind of things. There's a lot going on, though. We talk about new construction a lot, and
sure.
when you look at the stats, Jackson County, 58 new homes. 58 new homes were constructed in that 3-month period. It's amazing.
Those aren't the best construction months either.
Guess where most of them were done in? Were built.
East Medford.
8
homes.
22 of them.
Vista Point, yeah.
22 of them. Yeah. Josephine County, on the other hand, in terms of new construction, is really stuck. And we talk about this all the time in Josephine County. It only had, in the whole, only 14, which is really a high mark for them.
Yeah.
Because there is no new construction hardly going on in Josephine County.
We talked about it. I just finally closed a deal in Grand Special. Worked for 2 years with a family divider for some third highest per capita or third least affordable home market in the nation is Grants Pass, Oregon. And that reflects they're not getting any relief. They're not getting any new homes that are going to bring any kind of help to that situation.
They're experiencing the Ashland effect kind of a thing, where you just, the demand is so great and you don't build anything new, you don't expand out or anything. How do you build? So these are the situations, supply and demand, right? That's what it is.
Completely. And I think also just, locally here with the increase of new construction, that's what I was talking about as far as the inventory that is increasing that could end up switching it over to a buyer's market is the fact there's lots of things at play. There are sellers selling their homes. The new construction's finally ticking at the pace that it is. And as other buyers are priced out of certain markets, out of 100% of buyers, you might only have in the future 70%. That means less homes are selling at some point, and it kind of just moves into that situation. Though this year it seems kind of the perfect storm of both. It's kind of both seller and buyer. Not everybody gets everything, but it seems very active already. I mean, it's very active.
I think everybody needs to know that, especially sellers need to know that it's not what it was a year ago in the market.
When you were sitting on the fence and should have got on it.
Especially when you're pricing, you know, and if you have a place out there that has been sitting out there, you gotta check your price.
Completely.
Because it should sell. You should have sold it by now. So, and I just get the thing. People, sometimes sellers, you know, think that somebody from California is going to come up here and fork down just cash money and overpay for a property. And, you know, that
But I think Californians like their money just as much as anybody else likes their money.
And they're going to negotiate and whatever with that. So people just don't come up and throw money because, you know, you want to do, you think what it's worth. So, and that happens a lot. And anyway.
Well, I was going to say what's interesting is that when we often talk about average days on market, many times I've had sellers say, well, it says that it's 70 days is the average amount. So in other words, we just got to keep waiting for 70 days until that. And that is actually something that's I would say is believed by about 35% of the sellers. And you need to explain to them, obviously, that more time on the market is in no way helping you. You know, it stigmatizes your property and you don't have as much of a negotiation tool.
Nope. And if you're not getting showings, it's the same thing. You know, it's too high priced that people aren't going to come. Remember, you have to have a minimum.
And also too hard to get in, like appointment only. I need a week in advance. I mean, all these things that slow that down and make the house inaccessible do not help.
That flew a few months ago or last year, but not anymore. It's a different, it's a more level playing field, right? You got to respect those buyers.
So they're still obviously in the lower price ranges. A lot of activity. You're still seeing multiple offers. I mean, you had two. There was two when you were involved.
First day on the market.
First day.
And they priced aggressively. They're needing to move. They priced aggressively, and boom, they really hit their mark.
That was the first thing I said to you, is that they must have priced it right, because one day it was gone. You know, and if you're sitting there for months, then something wrong. You have to have an average of 12 showings, remember, to get an offer.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting there and no one's showing, again, you got a problem. So
there were 2 showings the first day, 2 scheduled for the next morning, and there were 2 offers before we went to bed that night.
Unbelievable.
See, I usually tell
that's what we're still seeing in this. So when
people
get
your price point right, you'll get it.
And when people hear those stories, they go, "Oh, that's what look at the market's just crazy."
I tell people that you can usually tell within the first 7 days. Of what the pulse of what's happening. If the phone's ringing, then we're in the right direction. If it's cricket, nothing's happening, then we need to adjust. Usually, for me, prior to the tour. So when you have the agent tour, you're completely dialed in at that moment.
And Greg, you do a lot of new homes in development, but you do a lot of existing homes, have some great knowledge of the market and what's out there besides those new homes as well.
That's correct. I mean, with the construction at William Way and Talent, that started off as 35 homes, and then Verity Village was 12 homes. And I would say that every year, 50% of my business is existing homes. So, I've been specializing in specifically listing, because I think it's really an art. I just feel like
that's a good way to describe that. It's an art.
My belief is that if you take care of the 10 major things that need to be done, so if you make sure that the outside of the property looks great and the inside looks great and the photographs look great and the video looks great, and if you're doing drone photography, whatever you're doing, and all of it looks perfect, great flyer, easy accessibility, then if it ain't selling, it's most likely priced. But if you don't do a lot of other things, then sellers are always like, well, I'm not sure if it's the price.
Tell me what you think. We've been telling
you might cheat yourself in the end. In that scenario.
We've been advising people, look, if you're going to buy something, people want it to be move-in ready, right? Or you're going to have to give some concessions back. Do you see that?
Yeah, I think it has to be as clean and presentable as possible. And often if there is something, it's better to remedy it first if you can, because first impressions are a lot. People still buy emotionally, and intuitively by price. But people are imagining themselves moving in that home. If they can't see the home through clutter or other things like that, I think it's just but I feel like pricing, accessibility, and having everything. I'm just kind of meticulous on that, so I
don't blame
a lot of experience. Yeah, it's experience.
What you're doing is you're reality based on what's happening on the ground, and that was what buyers and sellers need real estate brokers for, is to help them do that. And so you do a good job of that. We're out of time, so we're gonna have to go. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, how can they find you? You're easy to get a hold of. I know.
They can find me at GregGoebelt.com, and then also they can give me a call at 541-840-5966, but of course at Royce Real Estate and on Facebook at Greg Goebelt Real Estate Broker.
You can even Google him and you find him
That's
there
right.
as well. Well, good luck to you in those projects, and thanks for sharing your insights with us. We really do appreciate that very much.
It was great seeing you guys.
Good. Okay, cool. Well, that'll do it for the Real Estate Show here this week, and thank you for being with us. Next week we're back. We're going to talk about the legislative session, what's going on up there. There's a whole lot going on. It's a big week, so please go out and make something happen. In the meantime, for Pete and Joe, thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next Saturday, and God bless you all.